My name is Mario Heiderich, and I'm going to tell you something about scriptless attacks stealing the power without touching the sill. I am a researcher and postdoc at the Ruhr University in Bochum. Please don't call it a RUP, although it's tempting. We don't exactly approve of that. I have a small penetration testing firm, and I have been doing some talks about various topics around browser security, cross-site scripting, and similar stuff. You can also follow me on Twitter if you feel like it. I invoked the HTML5 security cheat sheet and several other security-related projects, and well, you're going to find me out there. So the background of this talk is, in the past, I have been doing a lot of presentations about the topic of cross-site scripting, starting with weird JavaScript, weird injections, things you can do, things you can accomplish, and so on. And there has been so many coverage of this topic. Still, we haven't solved the problem, but still, there was so much coverage. I was thinking about doing something else. We had research happening in the area of traditional injections, what to do against them. We had research in the areas of attacks from more or less outer space, like weird attack vectors. We have talked about classic cross-site scripting, cross-application scripting, cross-device scripting, XSS enabling, SQL injection, and client-side databases, site-wide XSS, you name it. Like so many things have been talked about this topic. And we also have a lot of defense mechanisms that are residing on multiple layers, starting with the network layer, the server layer, the client layer. We have CSP, which is still growing. We have NoScript for those of you who use Firefox. We have anti-semi for the Java people, HTML purifier for the PHP people, XSS tripwires, browser-based XSS filters. We have mod security, PHPDS, some other WAF products, IDS, IPS. Another question is, why would an attacker use scripting at all to carry out an attack? And is that even possible? So the topic today is scriptless attacks happening in your browser or browser-like entities. So we're also covering email clients, Skype, and similar products, or like instant messenger. These are attacks that have the possibility, has the capability of bypassing instances like NoScript, of bypassing common cross-site scripting filters, of bypassing installations like the content security policy. And this whole talk, this whole research was more or less a thought experiment, because I was trying to find out, given the fact that one day we might have solved XSS, what is left? What is left for the attacker? Will the attacker still have plenty of surface? Is there still the possibility to actually access and exfiltrate data? Or is the problem of users getting compromised via web application fixed by then? Will it make a difference? So the injections or the techniques we see today, I'm bringing a lot of proof of concepts and demos, mainly include happy injections. So injections that the developer or the owner of a web application actually appreciates. Like, hey, send me an HTML email. Or, hey, decorate your profile with some CSS because it's welcome. But we don't see injection that actually requires script to execute. Everything that we're going to see in the next hour is not requiring any form of scripting, but just the stuff that you would consider as to be legitimate injections. I structured this presentation into 3 small chapters. The first chapter is simple attacks. You're probably going to be disappointed by them because they're really simple, just to introduce the topic as such. I'm going to play a little bit with perception and stuff like that. The second chapter is going to contain more advanced exploits and more advanced examples. And the third one is going to show really advanced stuff that demonstrates how you can, for example, exfiltrate arbitrary data that is being displayed on a website to an arbitrary server without using any form of scripting. So let's start directly with chapter 1, the simple tricks. Here is a CAPTCHA. Everybody probably here knows CAPTCHAs, like these little annoying things that force you to read something that is barely readable and then type it, and it's barely typable, and then authenticate yourself as a human being. So this thing looks more or less legit. Let's have a look at this. This is the CAPTCHA we're talking about. And you can see here XW add $W2. This is like a classic CAPTCHA, some garbage text. And you have to type it to be able to log into your desired platform and do stuff there. So the problem with this CAPTCHA is that it has been doctored. It's been manipulated. And let's have a look at what's happening here. So what the attacker was doing with this CAPTCHA, and given the possibility of a CSS injection, the attacker, we call him Clive here, injected some CSS that is selecting a password element, like a password field in the website, and then casts the content property on it with the property value utter value. So that means that in this particular browser, the value of the password field that is pre-filled by the password manager of the browser will be visible in the DOM. You can see it, it's there. But a user who sees his or her own password in a CAPTCHA would not fall for it. So, hey, this is my password is secret, and I would never send it inside as a CAPTCHA. I can see it in plain text on my screen. That is irritating. So what the attacker does as well is injecting some SVG fonts via CSS. And what the attacker is doing, he simply flips characters. So he goes ahead and says like the S of the password secret that we're using here becomes an X. And the E becomes a W, and the C becomes an at. And he just flips characters. So the person reading her own password cannot realize anymore that it's just the password because the characters were flipped. Let's have a look at how this looks in real life with the source code. Source. Unfortunately, we cannot zoom this in Opera. Just have a look at this on your devices if you want to. You can see here's the password field itself. We assume that it's pre-filled by the password manager, so we see the value is secret. And then we style it a little bit. We have to fetch the SVG font, then we cast the content after value, and we give it a bit more style to look like a captcha. And we just flip the characters, and the user would know that the user is submitting her own password. All right, it's a simple attack. It's a disappointing attack. It's just like a lot of trickery necessary, but it's just to introduce which direction we're going. Who here knows one of the core features of HTML5, client-side validation? I see some hands, that's good. So HTML5 thought that it would be nice to extend the features of HTML forms a little bit and make sure that some things that formerly could only be done by the server can now be done on the client. And part of this is validation. So if you, for example, go to a website and you fill some stuff in a form, then this form is right away capable of telling you if your data is properly formatted, validating, or not. In the early days, this was only possible with JavaScript and tons of stuff. And usually you would have to send this data to the server. The server would check it and say like, yeah, that's not valid, and send it back to you, and you see an error message, and you have to retype it and send it again to the server. And this is expensive. This costs time and money. So this is all now working in the browser itself. And you can see it with this example here. We have like the name, which is necessary, so if you don't fill it, it's going to turn red. We have the birthday. This person is a little bit too old, so it's not validating. It's going to be red. We have no color chosen, and so on and so on, whereas the vanilla, strawberry, peppermint part is valid and thus green. So you can realize there is not only possibility to validate that stuff on the DOM, but also to give feedback. And this feedback here is the coloring. So background and text color, and maybe even the borders. Or like it's either red or it's green. And this is happening via CSS. So now comes the interesting part. This whole feature works with regular expressions. So we now have regular expression support in HTML. And this gives us the possibility to think about brute forcing. So what we can now do, and what has been done earlier but in a way more complicated way, is go ahead and use this validation and brute force possibility given to us by the regular expression to find out what the user has been typing without executing scripts, or to find out what the browser was putting into the password field with this autofill feature without actually executing JavaScript. So let's have a look at how this might look. Just to make sure you're aware about this fact, this is not a browser-based bug. This is like a specification-based bug. So this problem persists in every single browser, not only the one that I'm demonstrating here. So here we see a website, and this website has like a fake login form, or just like a symbolic login form. And let's just assume the victim here is using a fairly strong password of 25 characters, high entropy, a lot of special chars in there. So if you want to brute force such a long and more or less strong password, you have to spend some time. Well, we don't have time. We're attackers. We want to do it quickly. So let's try to crack it with CSS and HTML only. So this process I'm demonstrating here, it's 3 steps, but you can do this in 1 step if you feel like it. It's just like to demonstrate what's happening. Here you can see the password, and it's filled, like it's in here, 25 characters, a lot of entropy. Now we set this to start equals 1. And you can see some stuff appears here. It's like a small green box. And it's telling us the length of the password is 25. All right, how did we find that out? Let's have a look at the source. Here we can luckily zoom. So what we had before was just the password field pre-filled by the browser's password manager. And now we have that same password field 30 times. And this is being applied with a pattern attribute. And this pattern attribute has like a very tolerant regular expression in here. It's like dot 0 times. So quantifier 0, any character but 0 times. Unlikely. Then the next thing, any character 1 time, any character 2 times, any character 3 times, 8 times, 10 times, 11 times, and so on, until any character 32 times, because the attacker just assumes that the password is not going to be longer than 32 characters. And now the magic is here in the style declaration. So we can see we have some styles for the input, like for this password field itself. And then we have styles that are saying like input invalid, is not being shown. There is input invalid plus b is also not being shown, but input valid is being shown. So we can distinguish between a valid input, so a regular expression matching the password, or not. The one will be seen, the other one will not be seen. So this is still pretty useless. Let's have a look at how we can give it more sense. Let's click the 25. And we can see, oh, there is the actual password, question mark, explanation mark, M-A-G-M, explanation mark, and so on. That is not good. So now we have the password that was formerly part of an HTML attribute right in the middle of our DOM. Do we like that? No. Is this a password? Yes. How many tests did we require to brute force this password? Exactly 2,262. That is not so many, I would say, for a 25-character password with high entropy. And now the question is again, what did we do here? Like, what is the injection looking like? Let's have a look at the source again. And this time it takes a little bit. Oh, there we go. Like zooming takes even longer. All right, there we go. So we're doing the same trick. We're just injecting that same passive HTML now with different regular expression. So we start with like first character could be maybe the caret or not. Or second character, and we have a Unicode error here. Second character could be like this Celsius thing or maybe not. Or it could be an exclamation mark or like a slash or a backslash or a parentheses or ABCDEFG and or not. And then we move on to the second character, and to the third character, and to the fourth character, and so on. We go through all those characters and just check if this regular expression is still valid or not. So this results again in the fact that either the stuff is visible or it's not visible. And now we can go ahead and just make sure that these parts of the password that are coming from valid input fields are shown. There's the other stuff is not shown. So this is how we can extract the password piece by piece, character by character. Now, the problem with this attack is it's completely and utterly pointless, because we can extract the password and we can display it in the DOM of the injected page, but we cannot exfiltrate it. We cannot just go ahead and say like, okay, let's take these values and send them to evil.com. We can't do that, unfortunately, yet. In the last step, in chapter 3, I'm going to show you how you can actually do this and to give this attack a little bit more substance, because right now it's quite pointless. But let's move on first. The advanced class. Again, we have a lot of these, another harmless and hopefully undoctored login page. And this login page is doing stuff. And let's have a look at this login page again, because this is fundamental to understand the next attacks. You can see here there's an admin login. We just say like, hey, username here, ADMYN, and password 123456. And nothing happens. We would submit and we would be logged in and everything would be all right. Now let's have a look at the network traffic. Again, we select ADMI. Wait a second, what's going on here? There's get A to evil.com. There's get D, MIN, that's admin. All right, that's not good. Let's try, for example, the password secret. And you can see even the password is being transferred while typing the keys. Now you would say, all right, this is nothing new. Like with every single cross-site scripting attack, we can install a keylogger and just do it with the keylogger in JavaScript. But what if I tell you that this page is not using any JavaScript at all, that it's running inside the sandbox iframe, or protected with no script, or anything else that would block JavaScript? Let's have a look at the sources. So what we're doing here is we're using the powers of scalable vector graphics, SVG. We again have like the harmless form, nothing has been doctored here, just like enter username here, secret, blah, 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 enter password here. And here we have the part of the injection. And we say like, okay, we have an SVG. And to make it a little bit sneaky, we say that the height is 0 pixel. And inside this SVG is basically one single element. And this element is an image element, and this contains like the necessary xlang attribute to make sure that the browser recognizes that it's an xlang we're using here. And it says xlang href, so the source of this image is none. It's not pointing anywhere. And then inside this image, it's getting interesting. Because here we have something that is called declarative animation. And this set element can make sure that the surrounding element, in this situation, the image, can be influenced. It can change its color or can change other things. And the influence can depend on user-submitted events or other things. And one of these events that can interact with the set attribute and force it to influence its surrounding element is the access key API. So when being used, the access key API listens on the whole document for keystrokes. And if this keystroke happens, let's say the key A is being hit, then it helps us, the attacker, to set the image URL to evil.com $A. So it leaks the character that has been struck. Same for B, C, D, E, F, G, and that is the way we can just exfiltrate any data from the website without using any form of JavaScript. And when I first discovered this issue, I was like, that's not nice. Now you can detect users who have no script on. So it's like 2 million of them. So it's not that bad, including myself, unfortunately. And I kept digging, and I wrote a bug report, and I gave it to the Firefox guys. And then I realized, oh, wait a second. That is maybe not so good, because Firefox is not the only tool out there that uses the Firefox render engine, and Firefox is not the only tool out there that has the capacity of switching off JavaScript. And then it came to me and said, like, Thunderbird. And I tried it in Thunderbird, and I crafted a mail that contained SVG and this particular image, and I sent myself that mail, and I tested the keystrokes, and I was able to exfiltrate keystrokes from within the mail. Because Thunderbird at that time supported SVG in mails and HTML mails, and supported this feature. But no JavaScript, of course. But we didn't need JavaScript. We just exfiltrated keys, and that was working in Thunderbird. And with a smartly doctored attack, you were able to, for example, forge the passphrase dialog or whatever in Thunderbird and just like exfiltrated this data, and someone else was happy. Unpleasant. Meanwhile, it's fixed. Thunderbird is not affected anymore, but the feature is still there in Firefox logically. So if you want to have a look at that, just try it out. And we've been talking about regular expressions already, and there's even more that we can do with regular expressions, because not only did regular expressions in the browser hit HTML, but also CSS. So CSS3 is specifying something new, and that is the document rule. That is meant for example, user or per page style sheets, like for accessibility purposes. And it also gives the developer to cast a regular expression on the loaded URL of the loaded document, and then deploy custom fitted CSS for that very URL. And we can do interesting stuff with that. And the first thing that came to mind is like, okay, we have CSS that listens to the URL and casts a regex, and if that regex matches, it displays more and different CSS, maybe an import or background images. Nice. Let's make some fun stuff with it. And the first thing that came to mind was like, why can we not, for example, build a CSS-based cross-site scripting filter that is listening for suspicious patterns in the URL, and if there's stuff happening, the page stays white or red or something like that. And here we have like a naive page. It says like hello, and we want to attack this page with the classic cross-site scripting attack, which is like hello xss equals and then img src and so on, blah 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 blah. And the page says, oh, xss attack detected. So here's no JavaScript, nothing happening on the server. It's all on the client. Let's have a look. Everything that we're doing here is using the style element and saying like add mods document regular expression, and if this regular expression matches the content of the URL, then we will make sure that there is nothing in the body anymore, the background is being set to red, and saying XSS detected, and nothing is happening on the page anymore. Of course, this is complete bonkers. No one would ever do that, but it works. Like, you could do this. And I was thinking about, what else could you do with such a feature? Like, if you have the possibility to cast a regular expression in the URL and deploy styles accordingly, there must be more. And of course, there was more, because you have the possibility to now use CSS to steal tokens from the URL. Whoever used tokens in the URL, like for example, PSP session ID or JSession ID. Like in some projects, you still see this. For example, OAuth still has tokens in the URL that are being transferred from A to B. Now we can use CSS to actually read them. Let's have a look at the demo. Here's again a harmless page with a lot of elements. Hello, I'm a list item. And we have nothing in the URL that is critical yet. Well, let's just click this link and get some critical stuff in the URL. And we can see here, okay, here's PHP session ID. That's, by the way, an actual PHP session ID. And this is like PTS8, E7, and so on and so on. And we want to steal it. Or, let's be more precise, we actually already stole it. Let's have a look at the traffic. Again, let's refresh the page. Takes some time. Please don't let me be offline now. Oh, no, it needs to connect to evil.com. There we go. So we can see that there's a lot of requests in the background. And why can I not? I can see. So we have character P, position 0. Character T, position 1. That's right, P, T. Character S, position 2. Character 8, position 3, and so on. So again, we don't execute any form of JavaScript, but we use something in the page that is sending out these requests. So let's have a look at how this works. As we can see here, we're doing more or less the same thing that we did before with this weird pattern trick. We just write a lot of CSS. We just execute a lot of CSS that is all doing must document regexp, first character, second character, third character, and so on. And we move and move and move and move and move and move and move a lot of CSS. And as you can see, it doesn't significantly slow down the browser, but it just enables us to just snoop through every character in the URL, brute force it, go to the next character, brute force it, go to the next character, brute force it, and so on. And we just create background images that are being sent to any arbitrary server, and the browser will willingly send them out. So this API is not that super present yet. I think Firefox is the first actual browser to deploy it, but it's going to come. Like, it's in the specs, and people are going to implement it. I think the Chrome ticket is already there, or the WebKit ticket, and well, it's going to get exciting. So there is another thing that this time doesn't come from CSS, but from HTML5, and that is the dir name attribute. And I would say the dir name attribute is one of the most useless attributes ever. Who knows what the dir name attribute is? Precisely. You just read it on the slide. What dir name is doing is it gives the developer a way to find out in the client using HTML what the text flow direction of a certain element's content is, and then extend the request body sent to the server with this information, so the server knows better what the text flow direction of the element is. Good. I was a developer for 5 years, and I never came to this particular situation to ever need something like this, but fair enough, it's there. And the two browsers do it. And the problematic thing here is that we can not only extend the HTTP request body with this information, but also override existing fields. And that's nice. Let's have a look at how this looks. Let's be fierce to Opera. Almost. Opera just recently started to support this. So here we have again our harmless login thing, and we see like admin and the password, which happens to be secret, and like some thing here, like some captcha stuff or something like that. And let's take this and put it to a different browser who does not support dir name yet. And if we submit this fellow, we can see we just submit the query. No, don't want to remember the password. We see admin, secret, and some garbage stuff. So if you take the whole thing and submit it in Opera, different things are going to happen. We see admin, LTR, and then some garbage stuff. And we take IE and we have a look what's this is doing. And we submit it. And admin, secret, wonderful. That's how it's supposed to be. Then we take Chrome and have a look at this thing. And we can also see at some point All right. At some point. There we go. Admin, LTR, and some garbage. So now how does this happen? Why is that? Let me just zoom in a little bit again. And we can see here we have like the harmless form, method post, username, admin, password, value secret. And then we have like this fake captcha thing, and we have an injection here. Like I use this little arrows to point to the injection. And that is the dir name attribute. And the dir name attribute is being applied with the value password. And that means, hey browser, I want to override the password value with the actual text flow direction of a different field. How does that sound? And the browser says, like, yeah, that sounds good, and overrides the password field. So the password is not a secret anymore, but LTR, or if the text flow direction is any different, RTL, right to left, or left to right. What can we do with this? Well, we can prepare registration or login forms and just make sure that we can guess the password as an attacker, because it can either be LTR or RTL. It's an abstract attack, but it works. So, let's hope this gets fixed, because this is clearly a spec bug. I don't want to blame Opera or Chrome for doing this wrong. It's this way in the spec. The spec doesn't say don't override existing values, so maybe they should change that. We have meanwhile arrived at chapter 3, and we're going to have a look at more complex bugs. So who here knows cross-site request forgery, CServe or XServe? Oh, that's a lot of fans. Well, that's this one attack that is as old as HTTP itself, and it's like, hey, there is one tab in my browser, and hey, there's a different tab in my browser. Here I'm logged in. Here I'm on a different page, but this page makes requests on behalf of the login page because the browser cannot differentiate between the two tabs. So we have guessable requests, and they change stuff, persistent states on the server. We've all seen this. How do we kill cserv? How do we mitigate it? Well, it's easy. We just make sure that the request is not guessable. So we attach something like a token or a nonce, it's almost the same. We just make sure that the request cannot be guessed and that the whole request body is a myth for sites from the outside. Of course, if you have an XSS on that page that is supplied with the proper cserv protection, then usually the cserv protection is without value because the XSS can just read the tokens and then recycle the request. So cserv and XSS are actually pretty good friends. But we had the rule for this talk, for this thought experiment, to not use any JavaScript, to not use any XSS. So the question is now, how can we mitigate or bypass, actually how can we bypass cserv protection by just using CSS and other inactive stuff, not using any JavaScript at all? Can we do this? Well, some other people did this already some years ago, and I think there was also a BlueHat talk, and excellent one too. It was Sir Darkat, Gareth Hayes, and David Lindsay. They already did it, and there's still a demo out there you can have a look at. And they also use CSS, cascading style sheets. So what they did, they were abusing attribute selectors, and they're saying, hey, we just cast some CSS on the existing markup, and we say like, hey, select everything that has a value, or every input element that has a value that is starting with the letter A, and give it a background image that is indicating that we have the letter A. So if there was the letter A as the first letter, it was sent out. Same with B, C, D, E, F, G. And they could also do this with the last letter or with some letter in between. What they could not do is select me the nth character. So they couldn't say like, hey, select me an element where the second letter is actually the A, B, C, or D, or whatever. So they had to brute force a lot. They had to write a lot of CSS to make this happen. There was like loads, like literally megabytes of stuff they had to inject. So it was not very feasible. Also didn't scale, and attackers like to scale. So they had to do like A, and so on, not for every single combination. Like, that sucked. We want to do it a bit faster, and we can do this a little bit faster. And it is important to know that this kind of attack is giving this attack we saw before, like the one with the password and the DOM, sense, because it's making it feasible to be exploited. What we need here is a lot of ingredients to cook some crazy CSS soup. The first one is height. The second one is width. The third one is content at or href. Again, we map stuff to the DOM, so it's visible but doesn't have any other properties. We need overflow properties, and we need the font family. Again, those fonts. And another secret ingredient. So this first step of the attack back then only worked in WebKit. Meanwhile, it doesn't anymore, but we're going to see this demo in WebKit first. I hope it's going to work properly. Oh no, it zoomed with me. So here we see a page with a lot of text and a lot of stuff. And when I refresh that page, you will notice something. There's something happening. There's like some boxes, and they decrease the size, and then they bounce back. Did you see what happened? Again. There's some boxes, and they decrease the size, and then flip, 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 like these little red rectangles, and then they bounce back. And I'm like, what are these rectangles? What are they doing there? And why are they not everywhere? Well, let's have a look at this. Let's have a look at the network traffic. I'm going to go to network. And we read out the page again. And you see a lot of stuff coming in. Then we see SERCT. That indicates the presence of the term secret, does it? So let's have a look what else is being transferred here, like the page itself, and then a lot of SVG files. Now, what is happening here is the following. We need SVG fonts. And these SVG fonts are specially prepared. So we have one font per character. So we inject, let's say, 26 SVG fonts, just because we can. And we say like, hey, font number 1, you only have the character A. No other character will have dimension in this font. It's just like the A. And it has like a dimension of, let's say, 100 pixels. And then we inject the second font and say like, hey, I'm the font for the character B, and the character B, but now other character will have the dimension 101 pixel. And then we inject one font for the character C, and so on and so on and so on. So for every single character that we want to determine, we inject one font. Like we can do this. We can just say, hey, SVG font, this one character has dimension, and all the other ones with 0. Job well done. Then we need something else, because we need to find out what is happening and how we can actually get our hands on these dimensions. So we need an animation. And CSS, surprisingly and finally, supports animation. So we can animate stuff by just using CSS, no scripting at all. And we decrease the box size. And then we need some overflow settings to make sure that something appears at the position where we want it and at the time we want it. And that is the scroll bar. So imagine this. You have some element on your page that says secret. If you inject a font that only gives the character a dimension, this whole block will have no dimension. You will just not see the string secret because the 8 is not in there. If you move on and then take the font for the character E, you will just see EE, but not S, C, R, and T, because they don't have any dimension. And so you get the gist, right? So what we now need to find out is, when does the box containing the character overflow? So if we decrease the box size and make it smaller and smaller and smaller, that in a certain moment in time, the content will overflow. And when it overflows, then it means that we know how big this thing is. And we know how big this thing is means we know what character it is, because every character that we map has a distinct width. So the only thing that we need to know is find out when does this overflow happen. And the overflow happens when the height of the box gets higher as usually specified and a scroll bar appears. So we're at the point now that we can select, okay, if there is an A in there and the A has the width of 100 pixels and the box gets smaller than the A, then there's going to be some stuff happening and there's a scroll bar. We now need to find out when the scroll bar appears. How can we do this? That was the final challenge. Well, for the sake of mobile phones and beautiful applications and user convenience, there is a feature installed in WebKit, and that is the smart scroll bars, or better, the stylable scroll bars. They're not smart yet. We're going to make them smart. So we can put styles on scroll bars. We can say, hey, scroll bar, you're going to have rounded corners now. Or, hey, scroll bar, you're going to have a background image. And that is exactly what we want. So we assume that when we put a background image on a scroll bar, then the background image would load the very moment the scroll bar appears, right? That's what I thought as an attacker. Unfortunately, it didn't load it, unload. I couldn't time, I couldn't do stuff. That was bad. But I kept digging, and I found out that there is a pseudo class, a special selector that I can apply that allows me to load a background image the very moment the scroll bar appears. And that is simple to read, just minus WebKit, minus scroll bar, minus track, minus piece, vertical increment. So in this particular situation, when a vertical scroll bar increments, so loses size, then a background will be loaded the exact moment the scroll bar appears. That gives us the timing information that we need to find out what kind of characters are in there. So we have a leak, we have a data leak. I reported this thing on the WebKit bug tracker, and they were not so excited. And they said, maybe we're going to fix it, or maybe not, I don't know. It's what? Why would you not want to fix it? They're yeah, it's a problem, but maybe we're going to have a look at some point. Thank you, goodbye. So, okay, that's disappointing. I expected glory, like flowers at least, but I didn't get anything. And then I kept thinking, why? Is there more to it? Maybe we can do this cross-browser, not only with these smart scroll bars. And well, we can. But we need some intro first. So HTML5 brings us something else that is kind of awesome for as well users and attackers, and that is open fonts. We don't have to use TTF or EOT anymore. We can now use open fonts. One of these open font formats is WOF. I think it's Web Open Font Format. And we can include them via CSS, and we can use the add font face rule for this. And those WOF fonts, they support a very interesting feature. And if there is any typographers in this room, I doubt it, but if there is any, then they most certainly know what this is. Discretionary ligatures. Who knows what discretionary? Nice one. Good. Discretionary ligatures are a font feature that allow to map a sequence of characters, like a whole string, into one single character. So we can go ahead and we can say, I want the string cat on my website to be represented by a kitten icon. Like a little kitty, or the string deer to be represented by an actual little deer. And this then looks like this. So here we have the feature not enabled. We see the string cat, that's actual letters. And then once we do activate this feature, here it's called contextual alternatives. It's basically the same thing. We see the kitten. Everybody likes kittens. You can have a look at the demo. It's still out there. And this feature is quite awesome because it really allows you to create awesome effects on your website, but it also gives us, as an attacker, interesting possibilities. That is FontForge. FontForge is an open tool that allows us to edit font files. And it even has an API, like, and we can even interact with it from the console. And it's free and it's open, and it produces output in terms of WAV fonts that are used by the browser, that can be parsed by the browser. So we can go ahead and we can just create a font that has a representation for every single character out there. Like, for example, for every single string out there. For example, let's think credit cards, like the first group of numbers. We just create one character for the first possibility, the second possibility, and so on, and it's always decreasing in dimension. So we can create an attack font. So we can create like something like John the Ripper just inside a font. So every password or string combination, so to say, is being represented by one single character with a distinct width. So we can use a font to brute force through stuff and help us with the scrollbar trick to actually extract data and make it very easy. And fonts are optimized for containing a lot of character data. Have a look at, for example, Times New Roman. Like, there's so many characters in there, like tens of thousands. So we can actually create font dictionaries, attack dictionaries inside the font that map strings to characters that then have a width and then can be exfiltrated. So we just do the same trick over again. We make everything else invisible, and only if the string or the character is visible, we have a hit, and we know that it's there. Now the final question is, before we actually come to the end of this talk, how can we make sure that the attacker will know that? How can we exfiltrate the data? How can we know when something is visible or something's not visible? Well, formerly we used the smart scroll bars, but you know, this is just working on one browser, and we don't want to diss anyone here. We want something that is cross-browser. And there is one awesome feature in CSS that works on every single browser. It's for mobile websites, for other stuff, for accessibility reasons. Sorry, and this is the CSS media queries. Who here knows what the CSS media queries do? Well, a CSS media query is made for the purpose of having one website being deployed on several devices. So for example, I have my desktop here, my laptop, and I have like a certain screen width, which is just like 1000 something. And then I have my smartphone or my not so smartphone, and it's just, oh, here it is. And it has like a smaller screen. And then I have like my wristwatch or something like that, and I want to watch the website on my wristwatch. But you get it, like every device can have a different screen width. And the CSS media queries are made to deploy custom CSS for this various screen widths. So they look better, they look optimized for the certain device. And this is actually what we need here. Because we want to find out if something's visible or not visible. And we want to find out if there's scroll bars or not. So how can we abuse media queries to do so? Let's have a look. Again, just to make sure that this is working cross-browser. I'm a bit lazy here. I'm using some scripting to get the window to have the right size, so please forgive me that. Here we have a page. And now we fiddle around with this page. This is like tear it open. I mean, let's reduce the size a little bit. Oops, we have scroll bars. So we have one page that contains an iframe. And once that iframe is being reduced in size, like if once we start wiggling around here and the frame size reduces, it needs to break, and that means that on the side there is a scroll bar, and this scroll bar is going to push the viewport of the iframe so far that another media query is going to strike here. First thing, green stuff, we have a media query that listens for the screen width or for the device width of 400 pixel. Now we change the size, and we produce a scroll bar, and all of a sudden it's not 400 pixel anymore, it's 380 pixel. That means we have a different media query. That means we have a different request going out, and we have a proof that we can detect the presence of scroll bars. And going back to our original attack where we wanted to exactly do that, finding out if there's a scroll bar present, this is all we need. Now we can extract arbitrary data by just finding out when the scroll bar appears. Media queries did the trick. We have seen this already. So, is the attack so far clear? Because otherwise I can try to go into more depth and explain it again. Otherwise we're close to having reached a conclusion. Scriptless attacks versus XSS. Of course, XSS is a bit stronger, is a bit more powerful. We can get a hand on more things. We can grab cookies and stuff like that. We can't yet grab cookies with scriptless attacks. Like, we're not there yet, and I hope we're never going to arrive there. But the differences are not so large. There's like not so many differences in impact. Like, we can extract arbitrary data of strings that are being shown on the page. We can extract attribute data. We can get a hold on a lot of things in there. even if there is like an iframe sandbox, we have the possibility to use these kinds of attacks and still extract data. Like even if we cannot script at all, we can still inject CSS, and that is going to do the trick for us. And the problem is that the specification at the current level that we're dealing with have information leaks by design, so it is hard to detect. It is hard to fix. We can just combine arbitrary browser features and do stuff, and all of a sudden it's a weapon, and that is not good. And the biggest problem here is not that we have problems fighting the injection, but we have problems fighting the side channel. We have problems fighting the actual channel to exfiltrate the data because it's just an HTTP request. For those who use Firefox, bizarrely NoScript to the rescue, because Giorgio Maroni, the creator of NoScript, implemented protection against many of these attacks, but not everybody can. So this is not the best thing to recommend here. So the question is, how can we protect against these things? How can we protect against features? And how can we protect against the side channels that are resulting from these features? Well, one thing is like we need to reduce data leakage. We need to find out what is going out. We need to stop this thing. We need to filter our CSS better. There is no really well-working CSS filter out there for just the common web developer. If you have like a PHP dude who is writing PHP applications and he would like to allow user-generated CSS, there is not much out there. There's CSS Tidy and some other libs, but they haven't been supported since 2007, so this is a bad decision. We might think about building better sandboxes. Maybe the iframe sandbox will at some point arrive at a point where you can say like, hey, we want to reduce leakage. We want to make sure that the side channels are fixed. Maybe CSP will be the rescue someday when the adaptation is large enough. XFO, so X-frame options, are a rescue here as well, because we can stop these effects of someone putting our site or our website into a frame and then modifying it and doing stuff with it. So it's a little bit related to click checking. In my opinion, the first thing to approach is like better CSS filters. You gotta make sure that people who work with user-generated CSS know what the effects can be, what the problems can be. And most of all, know your spec. Know what's going on. Know what the guys from what WG and W3C are doing. They don't do security audits, to my knowledge. Like, they don't have that big security background. They perceive it as stop energy. So it's our responsibility to have a look at that stuff and to give them feedback. So, guys, this is not a cool feature. Let's think about this. How can we make this a little bit more secure? And I think we have the power here. So know your spec, contribute to the specs, and see what we can do with it. Well, that's it.